Excellent. Nice to see all your smiling faces this morning. Just in case you didn't catch that, my name is DJ Reali, and I'm with the Weather Company. We represent the Weather Channel brand. We own the license, but we're the digital assets of that brand. So weather.com, Weather Channel Mobile, Weather Underground, all the fun stuff. We do a lot with innovation, a lot with data. This is Lisa Vortsman. She's the CMO of Magnum Ice Cream Company. She is incredibly dynamic, and she just went rogue and left her notes on the table. So I'm super excited about that, right? I have the questions. It's a tougher part, right? She represents brands like Breyers, Talenti, Popsicle, Good Humor. Everybody loves a Klondike bar, right? Honestly, one of my favorite things in the world. And she's been doing this for about 20 years at Unilever, right? She's had a storied career, so we're excited to be talking today. So I have to ask, kind of the interesting question: form, flavor, and fantastic memory. Which ice cream evokes those things for you?
For me personally, it's a Talenti pint, always, across layers. I eat it in all sorts of deconstructed ways for myself. And then when it comes down to sharing it with the kids, it's always a good moment to scoop into a tub of Breyers and get very artistic and creative with the kids. There's a lot of arts and crafts in a scoop of ice cream in our household.
That is amazing. I tend to be a vanilla guy, Breyers vanilla. I like my own toppings. Wow. You can kind of get crazy with the toppings if you want to. And I also love a good Klondike bar, of course. Easy snack, grab and go, very exciting. So yeah, you might wonder why we're sitting up here together today, the Weather Company, Magnum Ice Cream Company, how does that fit? What do we do? And I think it's a little bit about some of the work that we've done together to create consumer insight. We do a lot of work with brand sales data, with weather data, multivariate conditions to uncover insights, and we have been working together in the DCO space, in the media targeting space to create some interesting outcomes, which we'll talk a little bit about. Makes sense? So let's start out with something fantastic like your career, because you've had a really interesting path, right? You started out as a financial analyst, and then what drew you to marketing? What was your path?
Finance was my first gig out of college. I always said that the truth is in the numbers, and I think whether you're managing P&Ls or using data to make decisions, the truth is always there for you in a spreadsheet. And so I think that's the source that starts everything. And then at some point, 2 years in, I said, I want to create the stories behind the numbers. So that's when I made my career switch over into marketing. I did a quick gig at American Express and then came back into Unilever. The company, just over the past 2 decades, has just been amazing in providing different opportunities across different categories. And then the very diverse set of brands that we have in the ice cream portfolio has kept me in the category for 13 years. It also gives me a lot of credibility with my children in their schools when I show them the brands I work on. So have just been having a ton of fun. We, as a lot of you will know, are in a big transformation now, spinning off the ice cream business from Unilever, becoming a standalone Magnum ice cream company. So it's going to be quite a journey, and we're just in the beginning of it.
It's going to be a very exciting journey. We've done the same thing recently, coming out of IBM and into private equity, which is always really exciting. We have quite a bit of rich history between our companies. Magnum Ice Cream brand is over 100 years old. You command an impressive 20+% of the global marketplace in ice cream. I mean, that's amazing. I can't believe you must be in every single freezer. I asked her the question in the elevator on it coming down, how many SKUs do you have? Except I couldn't remember the word SKUs. Thousands and thousands of SKUs. When you think about, though, a heritage company, you've got some really iconic brands like Breyers and Klondike, Popsicles, really great, Good Humor. And if you think about marketing for those brand categories, what do you do to keep it fresh, knowing that you've got this great base of customers that you want to make sure you satisfy?
Yeah. heritage brands are always an interesting marketing case study, right? Because it's more than just how do you keep them relevant. It's also how do you keep them engaged with your consumers. Like, how are you going to keep your story modern? So we like to joke that Klondike was actually the original UGC brand, right? Like 40 years ago, we got a reporter on the street asking people to engage with what they would do for a Klondike bar. So 40 years later, you could still ask the same question, but through very different platforms and in very different ways. And actually, these social platforms give you the gift of constant answers of what people would do for a Klondike bar. And it really becomes a massive opportunity for us to take some of these really kooky answers and response and sometimes turn them into campaign ideas, right? And scale and engage and further dare. Of course, it gives us an opportunity to champion National Dare Day and kind of make that work in our benefit. So a brand like Klondike that is very old and iconic, but the fact that it still remains that it has a campaign that is just as relevant today, asking people what they would do for a Klondike bar as it was 40 years ago, kind of allows us to continue to have fun with it from a marketing messaging perspective. Breyers, which I think is just Americana at its heart. I think it's a brand that defines tradition, and in many cases, you ask some of our longest multi-generational consumers, and they'll tell you it's family, church, and Breyers across the board. And so I think there's an element of that that's wonderful, but continuing to keep it relevant going forward becomes a little bit of a challenge. And so what we've started to do with the Breyers portfolio specifically is the brand is massive. It's over $700 million of sales. And so it gives you the power to segment it, where you can meet different consumer needs. So there's, of course, the moment that you come over to your grandmother's house and you have a scoop of Breyers, vanilla maybe, because that's just what you've been doing and that's what Sunday afternoon means for you. And then there's Breyers Carb Smart, which actually has stood the test of time as it relates to health trends. Carb Smart came out of the Atkins diet and is just as relevant today, guys, as it was when the Atkins diet was the thing to follow. It was relevant during keto. It's relevant during lower sugar consumptions. It's relevant with GLP-1 consumers. So to be able to take a heritage brand, have a sub-brand that meets wellness and health needs of different consumers keeps Breyers very much relevant. Popsicle, another, Frank Epperson invention of by a kid at 11 years old, an entrepreneur in his own mind. Continuing to keep that one relevant is also been a little bit of a case study for us. And so just because we're at Paramount, I have to do the shout out to the Paramount team. The SpongeBob innovation that we bought from an ice cream truck into the grocery aisle was the biggest innovation in 2024. And so you find entertainment partners, you find co-brands that are relevant today, that maybe are evergreen, but then continue to make you relevant across the board.
That's really awesome. And, it's not just vanilla for me. I don't want people to think I'm one note. I do love mint chocolate chip. And I might do anything for a Klondike bar that's legal. So it's always good, right?
We filter a lot of responses.
I hope so. So we're over 40 years old, almost 50 years old as a brand, and one of the things that we like to do to keep the brand fresh is really to continue to invest in providing the world's most accurate forecast and keeping that relevant for consumers. We were introduced under IBM to AI. You knew I had to say it, right? AI, right away. Almost 12 years ago now. I'm looking at my team of experts here. And, that really gave us an early look into how to actually use the tools, the large language models that develop forecasting. But we also think it's super important to have that human over the loop aspect to weather. So we have over 100 meteorologists on staff that actually qualify that data, right? To make sure we have the best quality data in the market. We're one of the top 15 most trusted brands in America because of that. So we're really excited to have that to help keep us fresh. And we continue to evolve our use of AI in forecasting for our marketing partners. And we also try to help consumers live their lives. If you think about it, weather's really a lifestyle brand, right? You have this invisible layer of something that's happening to you outside all the time, right? And so you take that and you think about how that shapes consumer behavior. So we try to provide information on wellness, on health, on activities, anything that's really relevant that can help a consumer have a better experience. That's kind of how we tackle the heritage piece and keep ourselves fresh. From a marketing perspective, Lisa, what are some of the most significant changes you've seen in the marketing landscape, and how do you adapt your strategies as that occurs?
I often talk to our teams about how I think the marketing transformation in the past 5 years has probably gone the fastest, quickest revolution across the board. It was always about the 4 Ps or the 6 Ps, depending what company you work for. And if you get the fundamentals right, you should do okay. And I feel like every single one of those Ps has been completely redefined, right? And so I think a couple of broader strokes where we went from broadcast messaging to very specific precision, personalization, participation as it relates to actually how we develop our marketing mixes across the board. 3 factors that we tend to focus on about that have made really the biggest pivots that are reshaping the way we market. The power dynamics have really flipped. So the brand no longer runs the conversation, the consumer does, whether they're an influencer or whether they're one of your loyal consumers. The messaging actually comes a lot more from the people that are talking to you. And so I think the way the brands have to communicate with people has completely flipped as a result of this power dynamic flip. And so there's an element of where you have to go from partnerships to almost co-creation with the influencers, with making sure that you're controlling the message that's been completely decentralized. The second dynamic is definitely the way that technology has revolutionized the way we create creative. And I'm a really big believer that when you use AI as your enabler, that's when you'll get ahead of it. This isn't about saying that AI has to come at the expense of something. And so my best, strongest, and favorite creative partners are the ones that come to me with AI as a partner, because they've proven that we can reduce our savings by 40%, and we have that on a case-by-case study. We can come up with optimized creative literally in a span of a week, where I can talk to a group of up to 18 different targets with 25 different messaging and optimize it, and so the story goes. And so I think there's an element of where when we own the technology that fuels the creative, that's when the creative is truly breakthrough. And I think in the world of innovation, and it doesn't matter if you're in CPG or any type of industry, I think innovation has completely evolved. And so in my case, when we have a ton of fun with our R&D partners in the ice cream lab creating ice cream, which we still do, a lot of our inspiration also comes from the influencers, right? So from the different concoctions that consumers come up with ice cream, with how they redefine their snacking needs, et cetera. So innovation is coming at us from all sorts of places. And if you consider that a gift and lean into it, I think that's when you really win the innovation game within the CPG world too.
I think that's fantastic. So you've been leaning a lot into social, right? And you're using it for, demand generation. It's clear that that's the place to be. It's a great way to create that two-way dialogue with a consumer, right? Not only with the social creative, but through the comments that consumers are making and things like that. There must be 1,000 challenges, but then abundant opportunity with social. Can you expand on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, we actually rolled out a couple of months ago a social first training across the marketing community, sales community, our digital teams, et cetera. And going through the 3 days of the social training, we actually realized it's not social first, it's culture first. And that became very inspiring to people when we said, you know what? Let's not make it just about social platforms and this whole social ecosystem. If it was about culture first, it became that much more tangible because everybody had a cultural moment that they connected with, a cultural moment that they wanted to lean in and own with the brand. And so through that lens, we've been able to really kind of start writing a new strategy across our social first dynamics. The consumer engagement and the feedback, and I always remind everyone that feedback is a gift and it's what you do with it that really matters. people really want to be heard, right? And I think that's just the human psychology across the board on social channels or outside of them. And so when they're giving you feedback and they're really struggling to open up that Talenti lid, you have to tell them what you're going to do about it. They won't be forgiving about it. Everybody's a quality manager. And so the quality team really needs to, it's a mindset a little bit of how do we change that and what do we do with it and how do we engage back. But social commentary for us has become, as with all brands, a way to engage with consumers differently. We have, a big, diverse tonality across the different brands. And so the people who handle our social channels have to live the quirkiness of Yasso that's trash talking to ice cream all the time. I struggle with that dynamic too sometimes. You got to be daring and, a little bit edgy with a Klondike, and you've got to be loving with the Briars, et cetera. So across the board, the social conversation, the two-way dialogue across the different media platforms has to live with a bit of a mind shift for the people who manage your channels as well as the people who manage your quality.
That's fantastic. We can't leave the stage today without talking about data. It's the buzzword of the last, I don't know how many years in this industry, right? We're curious about how you're using data to transform your business, right? And how do you see that evolving? I mentioned up front that we've done some work together in a couple different areas. We worked with your partners at Choreograph and Mindshare to analyze absolute sales data for ice cream juxtaposed with 30 different weather conditions to understand on a localized basis what we could do to target and help influence sales. What conditions actually matter and when do you start to fire that messaging? And we had some phenomenal success. We actually, one example, the temperature dropped below 60 degrees somewhere in the Ohio Valley and sales spiked by 30%. So you think about ice cream consumption on a sunny day, it's super exciting. Everybody wants to go out and see their kids try to manage a melting cone, right? But there are great moments. I even remember as a kid, I grew up in northern Minnesota, coldest place on earth. And some of the fondest memories are sitting with the family, watching a movie, blankets wrapped around us, gobbling up frozen ice cream, right? So there's something to think about there. And then from a DCO perspective, we used weather in dynamic creative, and we were actually able to create a 26% reduction in media waste. There's an efficiency to using data that's really meaningful, and we have become expert at being able to evaluate customer data, think about how weather impacts that, really create a precision around the marketing, right? And then capitalize on that in several ways. So real exciting. But how do you, now that I've waxed poetic about data, why don't you?
I'll start with the comment on the perfect synergies of ice cream and the weather, because when someone comes at you with what happened with your sales this month, it was always the default to say the weather got cold, the temperature dropped, et cetera. And I think where we are today is actually about owning the weather, and it comes very much with the ability to get this type of data and decide what kind of messaging you're going to run against it. And so obviously if a heat wave is coming, and we've had a few of those in the US and throughout, the ability to own the messaging throughout the week, you guys, in a category that's actually quite impulsive. And when a heat wave is coming on a weekend, the news will tell you about it a lot of times. And so that becomes an opportunity to sort of inspire an extra purchase occasion with a heat wave coming, and different brands will do it in different ways, right? Refreshing with popsicle, family fun with Yasso, while no compromise taste, et cetera, so on and so forth. So the ability to get ahead of the weather with the data that is available to us is fantastic. And then on the flip side of it, when the weather goes down, there's an element of it's cold or it's rainy or it's stormy, and it becomes a cozy couch moment. And oh my God, do we have a lot of stories to give you with an ice cream pint for cozy couch moments. And so I think that's where it's really, really powerful. Outside of some of the weather dynamics, where does data not exist anymore? So I think, we used to go from briefing huge creative campaigns that would just be sort of a one-stop shop for here's the creative campaign and this is what it's about, to now really coming up with insights that could be segmented by consumers that inform the creative. And so while it's important to have sort of one cohesive, creative look and feel, there's without a doubt an opportunity to go a layer deeper to understand the insight for the family moments on the couch for Breyers and how, the best things in life start with simple ingredients. Here's Breyers. How those types of messaging customize. So we are evolving our social listening model a little bit more into predictive listening. And I think there's a really great hook within predictive listening. And sometimes you get it right and sometimes you get it wrong. But it becomes less about reacting to what we're hearing today and more about take me into the next 3 to 4 years. And so, of course, it informs your creative campaign, but oh my God, does it fill up and inspire your innovation funnel across the board as well? So that's been a big one for us that we're navigating is predictive listening across the board. Of course, once your creative is in the marketplace, optimizing the creative based on the engagement and the view rates and et cetera. And then the last thing very much becomes about how does the actual consumer insight translate to an impactful media creative that also drives results in stores. And so then, everything on the in-store front has now evolved and given us ability to be able to do it faster. So it's much more difficult to track somebody coming down the ice cream aisle. It's your POS distribution velocity. But when they're on Walmart.com, how much more do we get to learn about them? How much more do we learn in terms of their search? And so that's a massive data input for us. What else are they buying? What are the opportunities to bundle buys, bundle promotions, et cetera?
You mentioned not even taking the ice cream out of the pint. How many people don't even put the ice cream in a dish in this room? Come on.
We don't judge.
Nobody judges. Ice cream is about creativity. It's amazing how many pints of Ben and Jerry's have I gone through. I don't even stop. It's embarrassing. So, which gets to need states, right? I mean, there's a lot of emotion behind the idea of consumption. Your brands, meet a bunch of consumer need states, and you have a whole list of targeting strategies that you use. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So on a need state basis, we've started to create more of intentional targeting around occasion-based marketing. And I think, you'll hear occasion-based marketing a lot across the board, but actually defining what that means for your category and how you leverage your portfolio to be able to address that becomes a true way to execute need states. So in the everyday, when you think about the world of snacking, and this is where the opportunity for ice cream occasion becomes that much more exponential when you think about your competitive set, not just something that's also frozen, but also a brownie or a bag of potato chips and so on, or a bar. And so in the state of everyday snacking needs, we really start to get very deep into it. So there's the cozy couch moment, but there's a cozy couch moment when you're watching a family movie with your kids and husband by the side and you have to share. And then there's a cozy couch moment for foodies, right, who want to experiment in sort of new concoction. There is an everyday moment for the hostess with the mostess who wants to do sort of the tabletop entertainment. And is she a foodie? And so then it's a talenti opportunity. Or does she want to just kind of please the palate for everybody? There's the wellness needs. And so within the wellness space, especially when you start to think about snacking, there's at least 11 different segments in ice cream alone. And so, but once you start to expand that into sweet and savory and beverages, it becomes really, really big. And so a brand like Yasso, for example, has a right to play with somebody who maybe just came after an afternoon workout and 3 p.m. and can do a little bit of a Yasso poppable or 2 or 3. And we have the right to play there. And so being able to take the need states of consumer indulgence and wellness and playfulness, et cetera, but to start to dissect it down to the very, very moment allows you to target the message you want to tell them and then the product you want to do it with.
That's amazing. So I think this is a really important area of marketing. You know, we've accelerated so quickly with AI and being able to assess audiences, and we have just been doing a lot of work in the neuro space, working with a company called Neuro Insights. 90% of a consumer's decisions happen in the subconscious mind. And you pick out different regions of the brain, and I'm just kind of getting super familiar with this now. Thank goodness I had a psychology minor. You know, you think about deep memory and you think about emotion, and that actually drives purchase and actually has the power to increase ROI by up to 20%. And we've actually known this. We work with a variety of brands across a variety of categories. We do this kind of targeting a lot, and this deep assessment of their business. And we can drive sales markedly, right? So, you know, whether you're a big box retailer or a CPG, whether you promote mosquitoes or you're, you know, promoting something from a travel perspective, the data becomes super relevant. And then that, how do we actually influence consumer behavior is kind of that icing on the cake. So we're really excited about some of the stuff we're doing there. We have less than 1 second left on our time clock, but you know, there's some hot trends going on in the marketplace. The 3 C's, I like to call them. What do you think is going on? What else influences your business?
Yeah. So my first thing about the continuous transformation and so much more that I think is going to continue to redefine itself is this content creator economy, right? The voice of influencers and consumers is going to be a big focus, and I think there's so much opportunity for co-creation with them. I think the whole idea of using technology to really drive the way we develop our creative is going to be a really completely new way, revolutionary way of how we do this. And we used to talk about brand purpose a lot. It's probably one of the things that energizes me the most is working in a bunch of brands that stand for something. And I think we're in a world today where it becomes about brand action because you have a constant two-way dialogue with consumers who are always giving you feedback. And so what you do is going to be so much louder than what you say. And I think that's going to be a really big focus for us. And when we do the right things, you really start to live in consumers' lives more than just their social feeds. And so I think that's very much a vision and ambition for our ice cream portfolio.
Yeah, that makes sense. And lastly, because you've had such a magnificent career, I'm sure there are a few budding CMOs out in the ether. Any words of wisdom?
Stay curious. I tell my kids that every evening, and I tell my team that every day. I think because of how much things are changing, it's exciting. And I don't think you're ever been in the industry long enough to sort of know it all. So always be curious, always be learning and sharing it. It's probably the number one objective of me being, of my objective as a CMO. And be authentic. I think there's, it's just, that's sort of my how, if you will. When you show up to work as your whole self, people work with you differently. Authenticity translates to culture, culture translates to business, business translates to brands. So stay curious, be authentic, the rest is up to you.
I love it. Well, Lisa, you're so gracious. Thank you for spending time with us today. And a special thanks to Brand Innovators for inviting us up to the stage.
Thank
really
you, guys.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Brand Innovators.
Thank you.